Hello, thank you for joining us for a special edition of Global News, revisiting some of our most impactful stories of the year. Today, that brings us behind the fences of construction sites around Halifax. This past summer, we took a deep dive into health and safety issues in that industry. Our sources say some of the footage you're about to see shows life-threatening risk to workers. Elizabeth McCaffrey reports.
No public protection, and the public protection fence is down, so somebody could get into that site at night. That is crazy. There's no way that should be happening. Somebody standing on the edge there without safety gear.
It took just a few hours of driving in an unmarked vehicle to capture this footage. Sources allege it contains flagrant health and safety risks, some of which are life-threatening.
Huge fall risk.
Little to no personal protective gear, with heavy objects or machinery nearby. Inadequate or non-existent guardrails, uncapped rebar, no fencing to keep the public safe from harm, and most dangerous of all, workers at height with no fall protection. But that's just what I could see from the sidewalk. Behind the fences, workers share photos of other serious hazards.
The ones with those open stairwells, people working on the edge without fall arrest, without rails, those are the huge risks there, and that's where the deaths and really traumatic injuries occurs is falls. So anything around that, that's a zero tolerance area.
Brad Smith isn't the only one worried by the tape. 3 other sources with expertise in construction safety watched it. On some sites they spotted only minor issues, but on others they say the risk was so severe they'd have shut the site down if they could. But other workers tell me taking a gamble isn't uncommon in Nova Scotia's construction industry, especially on non-unionized and residential sites.
I don't believe that the health and safety is being respected to the level that it needs to be in the residential construction in Nova Scotia. The regulations are very clear, but there's just not a high degree of compliance right now.
Nova Scotia is unfortunately one of the worst provinces for overall health and safety, for accidents being done on work sites. So we've got a really high amount of people getting hurt for the capital of amount of people that we have working on the work sites here in Nova Scotia.
Of the developers whose sites are shown in this story, only Orchid Homes agreed to comment. The company's owner said he was concerned by this rooftop activity and would speak to the contractor about compliance with safety rules. But he wouldn't go on camera, and like almost everyone else I spoke to, he wouldn't connect me with the person in charge of safety on site. Fear and secrecy are widespread in the industry, says this project supervisor, who, unsurprisingly, asked me to conceal his identity.
If someone complains about safety, they'll find another reason to fire you. So it's you do your job or you lose your job.
The supervisor suspects his company has lost thousands of dollars in jobs because he insists on doing the work safely, and that drives up the project costs. It's a culture this commercial construction manager knows well. I couldn't get him on camera, but in his experience, safety compliance often relates to dollars and cents.
The gray areas where a lot of people take advantage of it too is that when there's a question of what would a reasonable person do, they err to the side of nothing. You know what the rules are to follow. If there's a cost or a time ramification, you're told to ignore them.
A few easy ways to save on site? Skip the daily toolbox safety talk, he suggests, or skimp on necessary equipment like fencing and guardrails. It's not common in the unionized space where he works, but Brad Smith is familiar with the cost-cutting concept.
There's still an attitude of low bid, get it done cheap, and they will risk the injury, they'll risk the worker to get the job done quickly rather than invest the extra money into a value-added procurement that recognizes the safety of the worker.
But my sources say few people speak up for fear of losing their jobs, being bullied by peers, or worse, being blacklisted in the construction industry altogether.
The mentality isn't safety. The mentality is just get the work done. We're a bunch of hard-working individuals that are rough around the edges, and everybody's just trying to essentially to not be, forgive the word, a sissy.
A lot of people have a Superman mentality where it's never happened to me before. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never had an accident. But the way I look at it, it's kind of like the lottery. Everyone plays the lottery. You're not going to win every time, but it could potentially happen. It's the same thing with a fall.
Most agree construction safety culture is improving, But in the last year, Nova Scotia's Workers' Compensation Board received more than 500 injury claims from the construction industry. Over the last 4 years, 8 workers have died on the job. The Department of Labor received a complete package of Global News' footage in September, and to date, no charges have been brought as a result of the tape.
Now, for one Dartmouth family, the footage you've just seen is particularly difficult to watch. Brandon Alcorn died on a construction site in 2018, and now his family is urging workers to follow the rules. Here's Elizabeth now with more from the Alcorn family and a look at the penalties for health and safety violations.
If you don't feel safe, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't go on the roof without your safety equipment. Don't do it. Say no. Your life is more important than a job.
Janice Way pleads with construction workers, developers, landowners, anyone who will listen, to follow health and safety laws at work. She knows the pain of having a loved one go to work and not come home. In March 2018, her stepson Brandon Alcorn died from a fall at a construction site in the Dartmouth Crossing shopping area. He was just 22 years old.
Have you met him? He left an impact on you. We've had teachers stand up at his funeral and said that the impact, even though he was had to be kept on track at school, that he was just such a big-hearted, kind, everybody just loved him.
Think about him every day, and like people have said to me, I should probably go and talk to somebody, but again, I know that's not gonna bring him back, and they always say you're supposed to bury your parents, not your kids.
Brandon's family was horrified to see footage of other construction workers in harm's way, appearing to take safety shortcuts that could cost them their lives.
Those people are on the edge.
The Department of Labor takes a preventative approach to workplace safety, issuing warnings and orders to comply with the rules before launching any stop work orders or prosecution. When administrative penalties are ordered, for employers, contractors, and companies, it's $500 on the first offense, $1,000 on the second, and $2,000 on the third or subsequent offenses. For employees, it's $100, $200, and then $500. Those charges can be layered, sometimes adding up to tens of thousands of dollars, but Way says it's still not enough to deter the industry from taking cost-cutting safety shortcuts.
It's going to be more crackdowns on that safety. They have to get, I think, stiffer fines have to be put in place for these companies as well. I think if there's stiffer fines and more precautions that happen, then they would be forced to do more safety.
The Department of Labor didn't say yes or no when asked if its system is effective, writing in part that the safety of Nova Scotians is its top priority, and it takes a balanced approach to occupational health and safety by focusing on both education and enforcement. By understanding the rules, workplaces are more likely to follow them. Brandon is one of 8 construction workers who have died in Nova Scotia over the past 4 years, and one of the 1,000 workers who dies on the job in Canada every year.
It's impossible to have a conversation about occupational health and safety in Nova Scotia without bringing up the West Ray mining disaster of 1992. The 2003 West Ray bill says companies that fail to protect their employees from injury and death can be held criminally responsible.
Brandon's case will be the second West Ray bill prosecution in Nova Scotia. In December, his supervisor was charged with criminal negligence causing death in connection to the rooftop fall. The Department of Labor is still conducting its own investigation and has yet to determine whether a violation of its OHS Act took place.
Instead of just a fine that they're used to having, which is a slap on the wrist to us, it's like a penny. Multi-million-dollar companies, it's nothing for the fines that they get. Maybe now, if someone's held accountable, jail time, things will be changed. They'll make sure that safety's in place for everybody.
There have been noteworthy penalties in the past in Nova Scotia. In 2017, a local contractor got one of the longest jail sentences of its kind for violations of the OHS Act. 4 months incarceration for 10 convictions, one of which was failing to ensure employees were using proper fall protection. But Brandon's older brother Steve wants workers to take the first step in making sure it never gets that far.
Regardless of what your boss is going to think, it's going to outweigh you coming home alive every single day to your family. I'd say go above your boss and talk to them about what they're getting you to do, because at the end of the day, it's your life, not theirs. It's hard watching other people with their siblings when mine will never come back.
Brandon's supervisor, Jeff Gooch, will appear in Halifax Provincial Court in February to face his charge.
All right, that is one side of this story. Just a reminder, none of the developers whose sites you've seen in these stories provided us with comment on this series, and to date, no charges have been laid. Stay with us after the break to hear from those who say construction safety is improving. Welcome back. We return now to our in-depth look at health and safety issues in Nova Scotia's construction industry. It was only after our investigation had been airing for 3 days that the Department of Labor provided us with an on-camera interview for this series. Here's why so many health and safety violations go unchecked in Nova Scotia and what the province and the industry are doing to reduce workplace accidents.
Robert Henry is a carpenter with 40 years of experience in construction. But in September, he says he was dismissed from a construction job for raising health and safety concerns. He's not confident safety culture is improving, and here's why.
The workers were more intent to satisfy the owner of the company to be able to keep their job as opposed to working safe. This new culture of unqualified people that are in the trade now that are causing, I think, this safety issue.
There are more than 30,000 employers in Nova Scotia, and the Department of Labor is responsible for enforcing occupational health and safety at every single one of them. But with just 36 OHS officers, 4 inspectors, and a handful of support staff, some sites never get inspected. So there's opportunity for health and safety violations to pass under the radar.
We do know on construction sites that we do have a culture to change.
The ministry prioritizes site inspections based on risk, using data and feedback from its partners, including workers' compensation and safety groups. Sometimes inspectors do show up unannounced, often in response to a workplace incident, tip, complaint, or request from a worker. But it's difficult to track the OHS division's progress. The Labor Department hasn't published an end-of-year report on OHS activities since 2013. And months past deadline, I still haven't received the data on fines issued after that date. In a written statement, the department said it stopped publishing reports because there was little uptake in the document. It now has face-to-face meetings where it presents OHS-related information and connects directly with stakeholders to help inform its annual work plan. Department officials agreed to and then backed out of an interview when this investigation first aired. But the minister rejects criticism of the department's transparency. He maintains that the preventative, education-first approach to enforcing workplace safety is making strides.
If we get to the point of being punitive, then there's going to be, people aren't going to work with us. We need people to work with us because the culture has been changing. And it's going to continue to change, and it changes in a partnership approach between our department, between the employers, the employees, and as well the general public.
There's no doubt there's been progress in the last 25 years, which have seen the creation of new safety standards, education programs, and groups like Construction Safety Nova Scotia. They're changes that government and industry have made by working together.
We've had over 300,000 training certificates issued. Over 3,000 companies have become safety certified. Lost time claims have gone from the 1,400 a year down to the 500s. So there's been lots of progress made for sure.
Having safety officers or safety advisors on sites helps out a little bit because at least that's a set of eyes that's always looking at that aspect of the job. So I think that's a lot of things that are missing on some job sites, but I think things are progressively getting better. It's just we're at that curve point.
Everyone recognizes there's work to be done. Heather Crookshanks represents the non-unionized or open shop construction sector. She says they play by the same safety rules as everyone else and was appalled by Global News footage of workers at height with no fall protection. But she's focused on solutions.
When the HRM is looking at a building permit, perhaps those developers that do not have a general contractor working for them or a project manager that does understand the safety rules and does have safety protocols, perhaps we could require that developer to get a certificate of recognition from the construction safety the same way as we do.
And in the meantime, the Department of Labor encourages anyone who has concerns about unsafe working conditions to call its hotline anonymously.
Now, you may be wondering what became of the companies and developments captured in our footage. Once again, we'll remind you that none of the developers whose sites were seen in these stories responded to our requests for comment. Here's an update on what happened after Behind the Fences went to air.
Behind the Fences didn't go unnoticed by construction industry stakeholders.
I was impressed with it because I think it has to be known that the job sites in the area here, it's not just here, it's all over Canada. The industry is unregulated.
I think it's important to raise these things with the public, to raise the profile, let people know these things aren't just things you read about in the paper. These are local and they're real.
The film that you had for your investigation definitely showed some of the realities of construction safety today.
After viewing our footage, the Department of Labor inspected 26 sites in the Halifax-area. It issued 6 warnings to contractors, 3 for operating unsafely and 3 for not having fall protection plans or other critical documents on site. So the department's OHS division ordered new pamphlet-style information cards that will help employers avoid hiring contractors who are likely to work unsafely.
So this is a way to get information into the hands that have the greatest influence on hiring people that know how to do the work safely versus hiring someone that may do the work a little cheaper but does it much less safe because they're saving money through reduced safety protocols.
They'll look something like this, but instead of mental health content, they'll have questions like, are you insured? Do you have safety training? And can I see your certificate?
I think that's a helpful response, because if the purchasers of the products are demanding that they be of a certain standard, then the sellers of the products have to adapt to that.
The cards will be ready in the spring when construction season heats up, but not everyone is satisfied with the division's response to our investigation. Janice Way's stepson, Brandon Alcorn, died after a construction site fall in Dartmouth in March of 2018.
I mean, what's it going to take? Somebody else losing their life? That's ridiculous. It really is. I don't understand why that's all that's happening right now.
Speaking about Brandon's death has been challenging for Way. In fact, participation in this series has been an act of courage for many of my sources who say their criticism of the industry put their livelihoods at risk.
In your articles, you reference them as whistleblowers. I reference them as brave leaders. And that's what we need. We need those people to step up and be those leaders, bring the issues forward that people aren't aware of.
Global News will continue to investigate safety compliance in the construction industry with a recognition that cultural change takes time.
You can read more on this special series on our website at globalnews.ca/Halifax. For now, stay with us. When we come back, Elizabeth McCaffrey will join me in studio to talk more about Behind the Fences and her experience reporting this Global News series. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us in this special edition of Global News. We're talking about Behind the Fences, an investigation on health and safety issues in Nova Scotia's construction industry. Elizabeth McCaffrey followed this story for months, and she's joining us now to share her experience. So Elizabeth, let's start at the beginning. Where did the idea for this story come from?
Thanks, Sarah. You know, it actually came from a tip from a construction worker who had recently been fired for raising health and safety concerns at his job. He reached out to me and gave me a sense of what to look for on some of these sites. So off I went in an unmarked vehicle and started filming, and I have to say I was pretty shocked by some of the things that we found.
You mentioned an unmarked vehicle. Just talk to me about why that was important.
You know, I think we made it pretty clear in our investigation that there's a culture of fear and secrecy in construction. So naturally, people were pretty suspicious of me when I showed up with a camera. I can't imagine how that would have been different if I had showed up in a bright blue Global News van. Yep. But, you know, I think, you know, when I showed up on these sites and started asking really simple questions like, which contractor do you work for and who's the developer, who owns the land, it was really hard to get a straight answer. A lot of times people didn't know. A lot of times people wanted to know why I wanted to know. So you know, I had to end up looking online for sorting through numbered companies and subcontractors of contractors, calling lawyers to find out whether this developer may or may not be a client and whether they knew who owned sites. So just really simple things like, you know, who's building this condo development and who is responsible for the safety. So not easy things for me to find out either. And, you know, in the end, I resorted to writing letters to every single developer, every single site safety supervisor, and I just left them on the sites, hoping somebody would get back to them, letting them know, you know, here's what we filmed, here's what we're going to publish. We hope to hear back from you, and I didn't hear back from anybody.
Why do you think people are so hesitant to talk about this?
I think it has a lot to do with this this culture of bravado, or this cavalier attitude towards safety, and this is something that I heard time and again from the workers themselves. It's been done the same way for a long time. Change comes really slowly, and in an industry that's predominantly men, People are, you know, worried about being bullied and blacklisted in the industry altogether for raising health and safety issues.
Okay, so what happens next?
Well, this is something we'll be taking a look at in the summer. So I'll be driving around sites in a couple of months, checking to see if any of these things have changed.
All right, thanks so much for this, Elizabeth, and thanks for your work. Stay with us. We have more right after this. That's all the time we have. If you're a construction worker in Nova Scotia and you're worried about safety, you can call 1-800-9-LABOR. That's 1-800-952-2687. If you'd like to share your story with us, you can reach us through our website, globalnews.ca/Halifax. Thanks so much for watching this very special edition of Global News Behind the Fences.